But while things continue to fare poorly for Kiev and its NATO backers, an unlikely ally has emerged. ISIS to the rescue. Amid NATO's failures in Ukraine, America's terrorist mercenaries threaten war with Russia. This is by Tony Cartalucci, and it's up on Infowars.com. Threatening to liberate Chechnya and the Caucasus, ISIS would essentially be handing over regions of Russia to its Western and Persian Gulf sponsors. But instead of appearing to stand in solidarity with Russia against a now common enemy, the West instead has seized on the opportunity to instill fear. The Fortune 500-funded Carnegie Europe think tank recently published an op-ed titled, "Forget NATO, Russia's got bigger problems," and it contains some astounding admissions. NATO's agenda is expanding itself all along Russia's borders. The EU is now in direct competition with Russia over the future of the lands that are straddling the EU and Russia, and that its plans in Ukraine are in utter disarray. What could deter Putin is his own combustible southern flank and Islamic State, which Russia would be very unwise to ignore. It is these threats that are far, far more dangerous to Russia than NATO's limited intentions in Poland and the Baltic states. Now, if Putin thinks that NATO and the EU are his big threats, competitors, and enemies, he hasn't seen anything yet. The threat is clear. ISIS, which is a creation of the U.S., European, Saudi, Qatari, and Israeli design, is now being used as a global mercenary force, much like al-Qaeda was since its inception in the 1980s in Afghanistan. Now, Cartalucci argues that allowing ISIS to control large portions of the region would allow the West to perpetuate al-Qaeda throughout the developing world, basically granting global hegemony uncontested globally as well as at home, which is precisely why we are now hearing that ISIS is a threat to the United States. Rand Paul said that Obama basically turned Libya into a jihadist wonderland. Well, now a U.S. security team that was in Benghazi will speak out for the first time this evening. They are admitting to being given the stand-down orders. And they said a top CIA officer in Benghazi at the time gave them those stand-down orders. They say after a delay of nearly 30 minutes, the security team headed to the besieged consulate without orders. They also asked their CIA superiors to call for armed air support, which never came. Now, looking back, the security team said they believed that if they hadn't been delayed for nearly half an hour, or if the air support had come, things might have turned out differently. But of course, that was not part of the plan. No one was to ever discover that arms were being funneled out of Libya and into the hands of the rebels, which we now know as ISIS. So while propaganda has continued to portray ISIS as this mortal enemy of the West, it has failed to account for how this regional military force could pop up practically overnight and then challenge both the National Army of Iraq and the Syrian Arab Army without any significant state sponsorship. How do they have all this money? How do they have all of these weapons? The propaganda here is kind of falling loosely. But now the West is even using their mercenaries to threaten us here in America. But while the security personnel may have stood down in Benghazi, we have one Texas sheriff who says he's ready for ISIS and their supposed threat. This is Midland County Sheriff Gary Painter, and he says there are ISIS cells operating in Juarez. These people have said they're going to take over, they're going to strike, they're going to hit, and we are going to be ready. He said, if it happens, we're going to handle it. I can promise you that. Now, to put Americans at ease, the Secretary of Homeland Security released a statement saying the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the FBI are unaware of any specific credible threat to the U.S. Of course, this allows the perfect excuse for a false flag terror attack on the United States, which, of course, will be used to strip us of our liberties. They can just say, oh, there's no credible threat. We know you're hearing radio chatter and ex-CIA officials are telling you that there is an actual threat and that there are ISIS cells operating there in Mexico, but we don't know anything about that. False flag. Absolutely. The threat is the wide open border, which we have been saying repeatedly here. Now, according to an alert that was released by watchdog group Judicial Watch, it cites high-level law enforcement and intelligence sources. Islamic terrorist groups are operating in Juarez. They're planning to attack the U.S. with car bombs or other vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices. Now, that kind of sounds a lot like the FBI-backed terror plot where they were going to send car bombs to Times Square. Now, despite these warnings that Islamic State terrorists are plotting to carry out attacks on the homeland from their base in Juarez, InfoWars reporter Joe Biggs crossed the U.S. border from Mexico dressed as an ISIS militant. He wanted to illustrate just how easy it is for anyone to get into America. Oh, but they're saying there is no threat, nothing to worry about. Don't worry about our little false flag that we're planning for you. And just to display how absolutely ludicrous it is that we have these wide open borders, but we're being told to fear this Western-created global mercenary group, ISIS. City of Austin tap water versus filtered City of Austin tap water.
I can taste dirt in it.
God knows what's in this.
This has an aftertaste.
Tastes like Austin water? Yeah, it does. Ugh.
These people just sampled City of Austin tap water straight from the faucet. Next, we had them try a sample of tap water filtered through the ProPure G2.0 filtration system.
High quality H2O.
That one is better.
Tastes like nothing.
Yep, I know what good water tastes like. It's good water.
Most tap water contains added substances like fluoride, chlorine, Monsanto's deadly pesticide, glyphosate, and many others. Studies prove that these substances are linked to an assortment of major health issues, including tooth decay, lowered IQ, and even cancer.
It tastes like you're drinking out of the lake when you're drinking tap water.
Yeah, it has that processed flavor to it.
The ProPure G2.0 filtration system removes these deadly substances and many more, leaving only fresh-tasting, deliciously clean water.
Okay, this is very tasty.
It's good water.
Refreshing.
It's good.
Go to InfoWarsStore.com today. Use promo code WATER and save 10% off your ProPure purchase. Again, that's InfoWarsStore.com or call 1-888-253-3139.